Studio 33 AD, bringing you Catholic media.
We'll be speaking about basically what is marriage, which is maybe one of the, in history, it's never a question that people really had to ask until the 21st century, which is really fascinating to think about. We have this brand new question that people, for thousands of years, it never even occurred to them that this might be a question a person could ask. It's like saying, what's the color green? What's the color green? You know, what more is there to say, you know? But we're at this point in history where we have to ask what marriage is. And I think this is the issue. This is the issue, the heart of the issue. That for, roughly 1,000 years, more than 1,000 years, culture and Christianity, at least in Western Europe and all these places, North America, Christianity and the culture were basically like, we're basically cool with each other, right? We're either totally together united, or we're kind of on the same page, or we're at least like tolerant of each other, right? Now, us blessed folks live in this age where it's becoming increasingly common that the culture is not only not what the church is saying, but opposed to what the church is saying. But we've inherited this common tradition of the word marriage. So we all use the same language, but this is the issue. We're starting to realize we mean totally different things when we use this word. So my goal tonight is to show you what the world means, or what the state means, to use kind of an economic term, when they talk about marriage, what that word implies, and how it has to do with us as Christians, because it does affect us as Christians, and what the Catholic Church says marriage is. And you will see that those two things actually now, at this point in history, couldn't be more different. So we're using the same word. The word that we would have for this in philosophy is equivocally, in two totally different ways. So I took my money to the bank. I fell into a sandbank. Same word, totally different meaning. That's where we're at with marriage. That's where we're at in 2024, which is actually kind of cool. Because that means we have, as Catholics, the richest understanding of marriage of any Catholics that have ever lived. Because we are asking questions that no one has ever previously asked. Pretty cool, right? So there's an upside to this. It means our marriage theology, which at the beginning was very primitive, right? So like that, I'll just give you a brief history of this. In the Roman times, they're like, we want to get married. They just go before the priest. The priest would say, great, you're married. And they're married, right? No paperwork, no nothing like that, right? No Form A, Form C, all these different things, freedom to marry, dispensation, right? None of that was there, right? That was where we started, right? We get Paul to look at it in Ephesians 5 and all these things. You know, husbands love your wives, wives respect your husbands. That kind of stuff to go off of. Common sense stuff that worked for many hundreds of years. We had the Middle Ages. We got new society rolling in. It's very Christian, right, in nature. We got princes and princesses getting married and all these different things. We just discovered these new concepts of annulments and all these things, which I'll get into. But things that the Romans never had to think about, right? We get the Protestant Reformation. The church and the state separate. They have to ask new questions still. And then finally now we live in an age where virtually every single aspect of marriage has been questioned and is questioned by the greater culture, the postmodern culture. So my goal, as I mentioned, is to delineate just a little bit when we say marriage, what Catholics mean, and what the world or the United States in 2024 means when they say marriage. And to further highlight the difference, I'm going to call the Catholic version of marriage matrimony. It's the same thing. I'm just doing that in order to separate in our minds which one I'm talking about when I'm talking about it. Matrimony. It sounds more old-fashioned. I don't know. Same thing. And I'm going to say marriage when I talk about this side. Okay, so you're going to see me. I'm going to try to illustrate which one I'm talking about by also moving my body. Because that, you know, we're kinesthetic learners too. So I'm going to make a little chart, and I'm going to try and make a little chart here. Try to copy it from what I have. I'm kind of like a absent-minded professor type, so I might forget. I get kind of carried away and I forget what I'm doing, so sorry if I do that. But, so I'm going to put the civil, so this is like marriage, right? What they mean. And this is matrimony. Yeah. Okay. So one of the first things that I'll start with is this. First question we'll ask. Required intention of permanence. Right? What does the Catholic Church say about the required intention of permanence? The answer is must be there. Critically important to a marriage, all right? So, does it need to be permanent? To be a real Catholic sacramental matrimony? The answer is yes. Okay? Yes, it needs to be permanent. If a person were to go into a Catholic ceremony, right, a Catholic matrimony ceremony, and they were to say to their best friend beforehand, if this doesn't work out, I got a plan B, right? Which people, by the way, every type of thing I'm about to share, people have actually done, all right? Real things, 100% real, all right? So, if this takes, the answer is always, it has to be yes for this to take, right? Our greater culture, if you get married in front of a justice of the peace, will say, no, it doesn't need to be permanent, right? That's not a requirement of marriage. It's not a requirement. It's just not, right? It's obvious. If you look, it's just not required in any kind of laws anymore. Maybe it was once upon a time when these two were kind of closer together, but you'll see, these two are not. Here's matrimony. Yeah, it's permanent until one person dies, right? This is not. It's just simply not. Pretty straightforward. Okay, so that leads us to the next question. Is there such a thing as divorce in a sacramental marriage? Now here's something to think about. If someone, okay, let me see if I can explain this. If someone gets baptized, if I baptize someone and I say, I baptize you in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, and I pour water on their head, and I mean it, is that person baptized?
Yes.
Yes. Okay? Now here's a sacramental theology quiz. Can anyone ever be unbaptized? No. You cannot, because it's almost like a brand on your soul, right? It's there, no matter what. No matter what. Even if you renounce the faith, even if I don't like Jesus, I don't like the church, I don't like any of it, you're still baptized, right? What about confirmed? If the bishop says, be sealed with the gift of the Holy Spirit, and does the oil on their forehead, can that ever be undone?
No.
Never. Never. If a man's ordained, can I ever be unordained?
No.
You see the trend here? A sacrament.
What is the difference if you're laicized?
So if I'm laicized as a priest, I'm still a priest. I'm just not acting as one. Yeah. If someone is dying by the side of the road, I can still, as a laicized priest, give them last rites. Yeah. So do you see where I'm heading with this one? Mm-hmm. In this, because the answer is, it kind of follows from the first one, there's no such thing as divorce in the Catholic Church. And we'll get to a declaration of nullity, because that's not a divorce. In civil society, there's absolutely such a thing. Right? Yes, there is. So you can see, so far, 0 for 2 on these two things. Right? Okay. What about, who are the components in a marriage, right? So traditionally, for, maybe, I don't know, a long time, thousands of years, this was the absolutely assumed understanding. It's like saying, that, like when I mentioned, what is the color green? It's just like, so obvious no one's asked the question. No one ever asked the question prior to the 21st century, really. Isn't that kind of mind-blowing? This is critically important. And the reason for that is, one of the Catholic understandings of marriage is that it has to be open to children. Open to children, and only a man and a woman can do this. Okay? So, and then you probably see where I'm going on this. As of, 2000, Oberville versus Hodges was like, I don't know. But this is now a no. Very recently, in the grand scheme of things, right? It can be 2 men, 2 women. All right? And that, we can get more into each of these. Here's an interesting one, right? This is one that people are still assuming because it still seems obvious, but it's probably going to change. All right? Get ready for this one. 2 parties. All right? Assume, for so long, no one's asked the question. Right? What's the Catholic answer?
Yes.
Yes. Right? A man and a woman, namely. Okay. Get ready for this one. In Somerville, Massachusetts, I just looked it up right before this, they legally recognize groups of 3 or more. That's in the United States of America. Okay? That's in one town. All right? So it's not taking yet, right? But that kind of stuff, Massachusetts is also where this stuff started. All right? So when they can see 3 people getting married, and it's a marriage. They're using this word. They're using this word. So the answer is, yeah, polyamory, right? Strange bedfellows here. The fundamentalist Mormons and secularists, right? They're on the same page with this one, very strangely. But you see, once again, we're 0 for 4. Very interesting. We're using the same word. You know, I'm not here. But we're not talking about the same thing at all. And I'm not even done yet, right? Must the parties be open to children, right? Not must they have children. Must they be open to children? Right? That is one of the promises. In case maybe you don't remember, that is a promise you make publicly to get married in the Catholic Church. You have to be open to children. All right? Now, some people can't have kids. All right, so be it. But that mentality of whatever God gives us, we are open to. All right? Yes?
So one question going back one.
Yeah.
Did you mean to put no for the symbol
Thank you.
for that one?
Yeah.
He's just seeing if we're paying attention.
Yeah, see, you passed.
He's going to do well in the newlywed game.
The other question I had on
Yeah.
that one, I'm sorry to jump ahead, but
Yeah.
or back. It seemed like other religions would take on multiple wives in that
Yeah.
in the Bible. So is that has it always been? I'm just wondering if that's part of the. It's been a question they've had before.
Yeah,
and
this
they've questioned
is,
that before.
so this is something we've taken for granted for a long time.
Yeah.
That's a good point. But what will you see in the Bible? Polygamy, right?
Yes.
Which God, by the way, never condones. Never once does he say that's a good thing. Never once in the Bible. That's people doing. This is the logic of the Bible. People in the Bible. God bless them, right? They let's see. You cannot commit adultery. I'm already married. I know. I'll just marry another person. That's the logic. That's the logic, right? So you get King Solomon with 300 wives and 700 concubines. So that's the logic to its full extent, you know. And then Jesus comes along and says, that's not the point. That's not the point, right? From the beginning, it was not so. That's not. You guys you're trying to rule your way out of this. You're trying to figure out a loophole. Don't loophole. Loopholes are bad, right? When it comes to the rules of morality. Okay, so open to children. Yeah, good. Any more on that? Okay, good. So open to children. You must be open. In this, the state couldn't care less. They don't care one way or the other. It's not like you mustn't or you must. It's just absolutely not a factor. Not a factor whatsoever. Not something that's asked about. Not something that, just irrelevant. It's an irrelevant non sequitur to the use of this word in civil society. Okay? This is an interesting one too.
Society.
Yeah. So, another promise that you make is that you intend to be faithful to your spouse. Do people fall? Yes, they do. Does it, but they have to have the intention. The intention. I'm gonna try at least. I'm gonna make the effort to try, right? So, in a Catholic sacramental marriage, you must do this. You must do this in order for it to be a valid wedding, right? If someone, likewise, like I mentioned up here, hey, I got a plan B. If before you say you're best man, you know, we'll see about that. You know, like, it's like, I still got my people, you know? It's like, fidelity is not there. That can invalidate a marriage. We can look back afterwards and say that was never a marriage because of things like that. That's how seriously we take it, okay? So, fidelity required, yes. You have to intend to be faithful. Here, civil society, do they care?
Nope.
They don't. They don't. All right? Which is very fascinating to think about, what we consider crimes and what we don't, and things like that. But what does this picture give us, all right? It gives us, you know, opposite across the board. Across the board. Virtually everything that can be discussed on marriage, not only are we different, we're quite different. We can be opposite. Are there probably some exceptions to some of these in some states, in some countries, in the secular West? Of course, you know. But the general outline is as follows. This certainly is true. This can flux, you know. Here's the point. What does the state care about? They care about taxes. They care about custody of children. They care about property ownership. They care about right of attorney. And that's all good. That's fine. All those things are fine and good. And we need to figure them out, and they need to be just, right? What does the church care about? Eternal salvation. That's the goal of the church. For you and for your spouse. That's the goal of the church. Now, hopefully, this is interesting. And I was just talking about this with Father Vogel, the Vicar General of the diocese. These are the conversations we have. Or is that in the United States, we're one of the few countries in the world, I didn't realize this until he told me, where we do both of these at the same time. The priest is also the one who signs your civil marriage license. Very fascinating, or the deacon. So when a person gets married in the church in the United States, a lot of the time, if they're kind of going about, if they're not getting invalidation, they're doing those two, both at once. They're saying, oh yeah, you got my power of attorney, and also I hope you can get me to heaven, right? We're doing all that at once. It's very interesting. But in other countries, it's not necessarily the case. Sometimes they do one and then the other, right? And, you know, good Catholics do this. So, any questions on this so far? I think it's worth stopping here. This is, it paints a stark picture, and it got this way very slowly. It's not overnight, right? I think this can help us. What does this help us do? It helps us discuss this with people who are not on board with this. Because it helps us to define our terms. In philosophy, the first thing you always do is you define your terms. What do you mean by? Because if you don't do that first thing, you risk talking past each other the entire conversation. The entire conversation. Oh, well, you know, I think it's, you'll hear someone say, I just think, you know, so-and-so should be able to get married. What do you mean by married? Right? That's a great question. What is marriage? What is marriage? Go ahead and tell me, right? And just watch people go all over, right? But you know, and I think a lot of you know this stuff. I think a lot of you. I was thinking like, man, you guys know this, and you've lived it. You guys will have this more clearly separated in your mind, so you can talk about what Catholics actually are doing when we do matrimony, what we're doing, right? I think it's worth discussing what an annulment is, because there's a lot. Probably some of you know, but I'll get to you, okay? But some of you know, and some of you don't. All right. People have difficulties, right? This is an acknowledgement. Good people go through difficult times, right? And have all kinds of things happen. An annulment is not a Catholic divorce, right? What is an annulment? Or more properly speaking, a declaration of nullity. That's actually the preferred term. I don't know. Everyone's corrected me on that. I don't know why. Okay. Declaration of nullity. It's looking back at the conditions for a marriage at the time that the vows were made. Not afterwards. At the time the vows were made. And they determine something critically important was not present. And for that reason, the people were not ever in matrimony. They may have had this. It's quite possible. Very likely. Right? The state's probably like, yeah, thumbs up, because their bar is a lot lower. Right? Fine. Okay, great. You guys shared all that stuff for a while. There's nothing wrong with that. But after, it's like hindsight's 20/20. I look back in my life. There's something in my life I was not able to commit to this, or something in the other person's life they were not able to commit to this. It takes two to tango, right? Both have to say I do at the time of the I do's. And if that's the case, there was never the sacrament. It's like you look back at the video of me. This is a silly example, but it'll prove the point. And I'm doing a baptism, and you realize that's not water, that's orange juice. It was orange juice the whole time. That kid was never baptized. That's what a declaration of nullity is. Does that make sense? It's not Catholic divorce, right? Yeah. And so I don't want to use this as a club. That's not my goal. It's not to use this as a club where you see people entering into or failed or whatever, and because we're all human, and if it's not this area in our lives, it's somewhere else that we're struggling, right? So we don't use this as like a bad people. It's just to show like, this is what we're aiming for. This is the ideal, right? And this is what people commonly understand, but we have something better to offer them.